So what's going to happen is I'm going to invite each of the candidates up to do a 7-minute opening statement, and we are going to start with Dr. Bill Ulrey.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And good evening. It's been a couple of years since I've been a speaker in this hall. And it was a fundraiser for the new ASU campus. And it was before a very nice group of realtors. They did respond. You helped make it happen. And the professional realtors of this town are its biggest boosters, and we know it, and we appreciate that. Thank you. And many of you know me as a new home builder, now done probably 510 or so, and in the process, with the help of the realtor community, we've created some pretty good jobs in this town, in the construction industry, and the real estate industries. We've also gotten acquainted from as far back as 20 years ago as I investigated and wrote about wrongdoing in government. And yes, I do understand why city officials are sometimes so defensive and perhaps even uneasy with me around. I also think griping about the government is as American as apple pie, so if you permit me, I'll do just a little bit of griping about the government. You saw the newspaper headline just 3 weeks ago on the day following Memorial Day weekend: babes, boobs, and booze. Front page, 2 big color photos of all the action. And in response to that headline, allow me to read a part of an email from a former city council member. Lately, we have lost our way with a loss of trust in our city leaders. We now focus on slogans like "play like you mean it," financed by the city council through the CVB, to cater to thrill-seeking, inebriated crowds. Our city and tourism industry used to promote the home of the London Bridge and beautiful Lake Havasu. The entire English village was a prosperous place for tourism, as one example, end quote. Google, if you will, on your smartphone, spring break, and see who it is that's promoting the new tourism concept. You need to know who are the businesses and people in charge of this new focus of tourism, and then check those people and their relationships with City Hall. We need, I believe it, a healthy and vibrant tourism industry, but with a focus on what and at what cost. First and foremost, Havasu should be a first-class retirement town. Did you know 26% of our population are age 65 and older? 26%. 90% of the voters in our last 2 primary elections were age 50 and older. 90% of my home buyers are in this demographic, and I'm betting for you realtors, 90% of your clients are in that age demographic. But we also have unique problems right here in River City because we live in the 5th lowest income area in this nation. That's ugly. It's embarrassing, but that's reality. And we have a large proportion of our families and seniors trying to make it in a low-wage tourism industry. How do our elected officials respond? Well, look at the 8 years the mayor's had to address the issues with HAC, our city transit service, used by a lot of seniors and struggling families. Last week, Don Bergen, in a letter to the city, letter to the editor and the city, protested the demise of HAC, pointed out in years past the city did have a different system of vans operating 7 days a week, 13 hours a day. Another citizen emailed me pointing out that the $250,000 squandered by our elected officials to clean dirt at Rotary Park in a no-bid contract in preparation for the Lucas Oil boat races and money spent on new parking lots could have supported HAT for several years. So it's a matter of funding priorities. Funding priorities. I've also been writing about major issues with the sewer project. The idea of the mayor of refinancing bonds to 30 and 40 years is crazy. It was front page news at least twice. But we already have a sewer bond debt that's 3 times that of a normal city. 3 times. In stark contrast, I'm advocating paying down the bonds early to reduce that terrible debt load, nearly 3 times that of a normal town. And our residents feel it, given the nature of our economy and our income levels.
Thank you. Mr. Becker, would you like to use the podium?
Ladies and gentlemen, hello. I'm Tom Becker. I want to thank, first of all, members of the Lake Havasu Association of Realtors for inviting me to this debate. A little biographical information is in order, since most of you probably don't know the first thing about me. I was born in the Midwest in 1950, where my father was a nuclear physicist at the University of Illinois. When I was 10, we moved to Los Angeles, where he directed the space physics lab at the Aerospace Corporation. We lived on the PV Peninsula, where I was a pitcher in Little League, and in one game threw 14 strikeouts. Always been proud of that. A math science major in high school, I took several honors math classes and clinched the sophomore pull-up record by doing 21 pull-ups. Now I can do about 3. My first formal job was as a box boy at our local Vons supermarket, which is significant because that was the #1 Vons store when it was the leading grocery chain in Southern California. I majored in zoology at UCLA, where I met my future wife, Linda, over there somewhere. An English major. I was pre-med and then pre-veterinary and worked as a doctor's assistant at a vet hospital in West Los Angeles. Living in the heart of that busy metropolis, I was increasingly drawn to nature. I loved to spend time in the UCLA Botanic Garden or to ride my motorcycle up to Santa Barbara. In my senior year, I also became an avid bicyclist and went backpacking in the San Gabriel Mountains as often as possible. I earned my BA in 1972. Following our graduation, Linda and I spent the summer in northern New Mexico near Taos, where we camped among tall ponderosa pines, white firs, and junipers at 8,250 feet in elevation. Eventually, we ended up in Santa Barbara, where we lived for 11 years. I became a writer-photographer, an artist, a carpenter, and an independent naturalist, exhibiting some of my work at the Museum of Natural History in Santa Barbara. Before we left the area, I hosted the nicest campground in the county, Figueroa Campground, amid pines, oaks, and rare manzanita trees. I made copious notes on the plant and animal life and took many of my best wildlife photos there. I'm having a little trouble with my regular glasses here, so. I also kept a detailed log of my efforts to end thoughtless abuse of the beautiful spot, to dramatically improve it, and to maintain it to the highest standards of which I was capable. As a direct result of my work, public use and appreciation of that special place, Figueroa Campground, increased dramatically. We moved to Taos in 1985, where we built a cabin ourselves. Much of the work I did with hand tools, and we lived there for most of the next 10 years. We hauled drinking water, caught wash water and irrigation water off the roof, heated with wood, and used kerosene lamps and 12-volt lights. There was always a great deal of work to do: mechanics, construction, cabinetry, furniture making, forestry, fencing, road building, landscaping, tree pruning, endless snow removal, wood gathering, unrelenting security work, and a ton of legal research, etc. Midway through the experience, we spent a year and a half in Marin County, California, where I became a substitute teacher for grades 1 through 12. When we returned to New Mexico, we made a number of significant improvements to our property. In 1995, I became a teaching assistant at the biology department of the University of Nebraska at Omaha, where I studied insects and spiders and close-up photo techniques. Then did my thesis project, a survey of frogs and toads at 2 state parks and a national wildlife refuge. I earned a straight A+ average at UNO, far better than I did at the University of California, by the way, and graduated in 1997 with an MA in biology. I sold our property in New Mexico for roughly 4 times our financial investment, much more than local experts had repeatedly declared it was worth. We toured the western states for 2 years in our fifth wheel before buying a modest home in Lake Havasu City. We've lived here year-round, every summer, all through, for 15 years. I do virtually all of my own work and have written 4 books since we arrived. I think we've lost sight of the most important reason our city government exists: to serve our needs. Most property taxpayers cannot afford to shoulder excessive spending by the school district, the city, or the county, who tend to throw money at problems. Even expensive, misguided schemes like wayfinding signs, $500,000. And cultivating tourism should come a distant second to the vital interests of our permanent residents. When we drive into town, we are lucky to avoid being sideswiped by some knucklehead pulling a big boat around with insufficient caution. I'm sure you all have gone through that. Members of the establishment, like Steve Cleverly, the radio host, I recall, advised us to hide in our homes over the weekend, especially over the holidays. We must attract more tourists, they say, and patiently tolerate everything they do. Who thunk that one up? As if that weren't bad enough, we've seen one good thing after another taken away from us. I was dismayed when beautiful Rotary Park was fenced off for the Lucas Oil drag boat races, with the usual rules suspended just for them. They park their fancy motorhomes on the beach, camp in the parking lot, drink openly as they casually walk around, bicycle down the channel walk, yelling at pedestrians to get out of their way. You have to wonder why they can't camp at one of our RV parks, who could use the off-season business. I don't like to see Sarah Park barricaded off for the fireworks either, which used to be free, or its open space chopped up for dedicated uses enjoyed only by a select few. And I certainly don't think it appropriate for Main Street to be fenced off for the New Year's Eve celebration, excluding anyone but the well-heeled.
Mayor Nixon?
Just turn off the electric. We'll just turn off
Whoa. Everyone see me okay? Good. Yeah, I probably do need one, don't I? Good evening, everyone. I really appreciate you being here, and I really appreciate the Lake Havasu Association of Realtors for having all of us kind of discuss the issues with all of you this evening. Very briefly, my background, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a 1976 honors graduate with a BS in accounting from San Diego State University. I went to work immediately with Ernst & Young, one of the largest and most respected accounting firms in the world. And I was a partner there for 11 years. And many of you know me from owning and operating a CPA firm here in Lake Havasu City. And I can't leave out, I'm married to my wife Eileen for the last 36 years. Dear, thank you for being here. A couple other activities. I'm the chairman of the Tri-City Council, past chairman of the Greater Arizona Mayors Association. I'm currently on the executive committee for the League of Arizona Cities and Towns, and I was appointed by Governor Brewer to be on the Municipal Tax Code Commission. Let's go back a few years. In 2006, you elected me as your mayor in the midst of a lot of turmoil. We all remember the manifesto. One of my opponents was part of that chaos and recall. And we don't need to go back to that time. And thanks to you, with all of your support, we stopped the political turmoil, and we have had a very stable local city government for the last 8 years. And unlike any other Arizona city, we not only lowered your property taxes by $800,000 in the midst of the Great Recession, we also put away a $2.5 million rainy day reserve, first in the city's history. We formalized the Tri-City Council to work cooperatively with our neighbors and save costs. We created the Council Code of Conduct. We reorganized City Hall to be more responsive to you. And we rezoned many parts of Lake Havasu City to promote managed development, and many of the folks in this room, or I should say several of you who are realtors, helped us with that on a blue ribbon panel committee. We implemented a solar project with no upfront investment, creating local jobs, guaranteed utility rates, and savings to you of over $1 million. They said it couldn't be done, we did it. Expanded our jail in 2012 and created trustee work crews, saving you thousands of dollars. I fought for and we received landscaping along Highway 95, but I'm not kidding myself, we need a lot more. We promote local small business. You'll recall the Tri-City Council and their Buy Local campaign. Very important and was very useful. But we went beyond that. We brought in new businesses such as Anderson Toyota, Romer Beverage, and many, many new retailers. We created new parks for our citizens and improved existing parks for our citizens, such as Sarah and Rotary Park. The new Patrick Tennell Memorial Sports Complex is absolutely magnificent and has been congressionally recognized. The sewer project was completed 2 years ahead of schedule and $120 million under budget. And we now have a tentative agreement with WIFA to lower high interest debt that we have to a lower interest rate. We led the team to bring in ASU to town. That was not an easy prospect. We worked very hard to do that. And you heard a statistic about the education of our area. ASU will make a difference in that statistic. And they continue to grow, and they expect this fall to have as many as right now they have 500 applicants. And so we're very, very hopeful that many of those will choose Lake Havasu City. I'm also passionate about America's veterans. Very, very important to me. And I welcome home returning men and women from combat as part of our Patriot Guard ceremonies, and I present them with a key to our city. And I fought for and created a Veterans Court here in Lake Havasu City, one of the only rural veterans courts in all of the United States. And I've got to thank Judge Kalali, who is a veteran, for helping get that done, and it is very, very successful. Now, that's just a sampling of what we were able to accomplish in the past 7 or 8 years, and I look forward to serving you over the next 4 years. Now, you heard a statement about transit. Transit is a difficult issue, and we've been working on it. It has cost us, the taxpayer, on average, $800,000 a year for very few riders. But we now have a system that we're going to put in place. And Mr. Ulrich made a statement that we should have solved this a long time ago. But at his own town hall, he said we would be way better off to scrap the whole transit and just give seniors and the handicapped people and low-income people, well, just give them $6 and let them ride a shuttle. I have a little more sensitivity for that. So we are designing a system that is going to provide rides for the most vulnerable in our city. And that's what we should be doing. I try to be a very positive person. And that's what you can expect from me for the next 4 years. We will remain very, very positive. We are going to try to get things done. One of the things we still need to work on, as you know, is the sewer and trying to get our payments down. And I've got a few ideas how we can do it. And as I said, we've got a tentative agreement that would hold rates constant for the next several years. So I would appreciate your vote on August 26, 2014 for mayor. Let's keep this positive momentum going. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to the fixed Q&A, the equal time Q&A. So with that, we're going to start with the questions from the Lake Havasu Association of Realtors. And the first question is, you're not going to be surprised to hear that these are like property-related questions going to realtors, right? So the first question is regarding distressed properties. So, we had some issues with the real estate market a few years ago, and that led to a lot of foreclosures and vacant properties. And so the question is, what can be done with respect to distressed properties? We see some properties where windows are boarded up or have sustained exterior damage. Question, what could be done with respect to distressed properties? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, well, that isn't a question that I would put right in my area of expertise. It reminds me a little bit of the English Village. Still down there, supposed to be demolished, promised by the current owner a long time ago. I don't think you should be able to maintain eyesores or health hazards, that's for sure. Distressed properties, can you help the owners get it fixed up? I've seen some of that happening. Other than that, I don't have a particular opinion on that at this time.
Very well. If you'd like to pass the microphone, thank you.
Thank you. The state of Washington has an extensive and free manual for its cities for control and abatement of public nuisances. And amazingly so, in a lot of cities, meter maids are empowered to write tickets, traffic tickets, jaywalking tickets. And in some cities, code inspectors are empowered to write tickets for junk and trash. I think we all know it when we see it, junk and trash, or conditions of any kind that detract from the home values of neighbors, of neighborhoods, and various sections of the city. So with the demographic we have, that homeowner, in most cases, it's the one major investment they have and have left. And how the surrounding homes, how the rest of the community protects the investment of our seniors is pretty important to them. So I think how we structure code enforcement, maybe borrowing some ideas free from other states such as Washington, empowering our city employees to enforce codes and do it as simple as something as we empower meter maids on parking and jaywalking.
Good question. Distressed properties throughout the extended recession were clearly an issue. And in fact, during that period of time, many of the people in the community would ask City Hall actually to, if you will, not be as restrictive on code enforcement, we'll just say, because these people were struggling, trying to get through, making payments, figuring out how to refinance and keep their homes. But those that have become an eyesore, we have to deal with. And you deal with that, it's a legal process. It's called abatement. And you have to be very sensitive to that legal process, because you shouldn't be taking anybody's home away just because you want to. You try to work with that homeowner, and in some cases, these are people that actually don't live there. Maybe it was an inherited home. Multiple family members might own it, and you get them to try to clean it up. But if they don't, you go through that legal process of abatement. And we had just one of those examples just recently, where the neighbors were saying something's got to be done, and we went through the abatement process and we demolished the home. And that's what we have to do, because what we're trying to do here in Lake Havasu City is not only use the codes what we currently have, but strengthen our codes. And that's what we're doing as we speak, because our codes for the last umpteen years never allowed anybody to write a ticket based on a code enforcement issue, and that's got to change. And we're changing that based on what we heard from you at a recent work session in March or February, I can't quite remember. We're changing those codes. You asked for it, we're going to do it. It's a balancing act when it comes to code enforcement, but we're going to make it happen because we need to protect our properties and beautify our city. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'll hold on to the mic, I'm gonna stick with you for just a second. We have another, it's a property question. So the statement is that property values are directly affected by public facilities, and the question is, what could be done to improve our local streets to fully pave them out with curbs, gutters, and sidewalks? It's not my question. I'm just
Well, you just heard the boo. Let's explore streets and what it means to us. The city, and well, let's not just say the city. Cities across Arizona have had a dilemma over the last 10 years. Maybe it's 12 years actually. 1.4 billion. Yep, that's right. With a B. 1.4 billion has been swept by the state of Arizona so that they could balance their budget, leaving citizens like you who paid that gas tax to come back to your city to pave our roads high and dry. That's exactly what happened. This year, they didn't sweep the traditional $120 million. They only swept 90. So we're making progress. But the fact of the matter is, we're going to have to improve our streets. And, I've already have a plan to reallocate some of our resources because we can no longer count on the state. We were counting on the state. We thought this was a year that a new leaf was going to be turned over, and we were going to have an opportunity to get that full amount of your gas tax. It's called HERF, Highway User Revenue Funds. But since, in my view, it's clear that as hard as we push, we're still only going to get a little bit of it, we may as well just plan on putting it in our own budget and improving our streets. Now when it comes to curbs and sidewalks, all I can say is that for those who want it, great. They do cost about $250,000 a mile because you have to widen the street before you can do anything. But my reading from this community is they're not too interested in a lot of curbs or sidewalks or street lamps. They want the night sky, and I certainly understand that and respect those wishes. One day maybe we'll become a community with all of those things when the community changes, but it's certainly not today. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I had one little part at the end of my introductory remarks. I think our bumpy roads need a great deal of work so that driving on them is a smooth, comfortable experience. If elected, I'll see that it's done, and will insist upon cost-effective efficiency from the road department and every other city department as well. No more wrecking the road and leaving it that way for months on end, with the road crew strangely absent much of the time. Yes, the roads are in terrible shape. I have a couple of tires on my passenger car that I got for very little money. They're kind of hard. The guy warned me that after 3 years, the tires they have go bad. And so I feel every friggin' bump in this town. And believe you me, especially those ones down there at the main intersection on Lake Havasu Avenue, where we have that wonderful logo on the street. Boom, 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 you know. Geez, could they have made that flush? And some of these manhole covers, same thing. The gas lines across the street, can't they be made to make those patches professionally? So there's no bump when you go over them. The streets are in terrible shape. Obviously the money's going somewhere else. Why we have money for wayfinding signs, I'm not sure. As far as curbs, they don't put the curbs in until the street's as wide as it's ever going to be. You know how the city property goes way up onto your lot? Well, they intend to widen all the roads someday, like they did on Cherry Tree. Move all those mailboxes back. We're widening the road. I live up in the southeast foothills. Terrible problems when the heavy rain, when the water comes washing down. So we just took care of it ourselves. I finally was able to get my neighbors to follow my example, and put a bunch of rock there by the pavement and build your own curb out of big rock. Works great. You don't have to wait for the city. It's the city property, yeah. But that's the kind of background I bring to the table. Do it yourself. Don't wait for the city to get around with all the bureaucracy and the kind of stuff the mayor was just talking about, you know. Saying, huh? Well, I'm glad you know all that stuff, Mark, but, you know, if you need a curb for the heavy rains, do it yourself. I recommend it. Good exercise, too.
You know, I look at the budget and the debt situation we have, and I got to come back to this burden we carry. This little town passed the largest municipal revenue bond in the history of Arizona when it did the sewer bond. And we carry a debt load that's 2.5 to 3 times that of a normal town. And until we clear away a bit of that debt, we're never going to function normally. You look at the burden of our overwhelmingly senior citizen population, and I don't think they're in a position to pay more taxes for increased services. MCC, and the article today in the paper, 3 times now, a major article 3 weeks ago, have elected to pay down their bond debts. And in doing so, they have created a savings of hundreds of thousands of dollars of interest, not to mention the principal they don't have to pay. And in doing so, they are creating budget space, or money to use on their primary mission, which that of serving the educational needs of our community. So I'm inclined to propose looking at all of the resources we have. The reserve funds, as MCC is doing, very conservative approach to budgeting. And they're paying their bonds down. The objective is to unload the interest burden that is there on the college and to free up budget space for other priorities than paying debt, than paying principal and paying interest. Not a bad conservative budgeting philosophy for city government. That's my, that'd be one of my primary objectives. Pay down the debt.
Dr. Owen, if you stay with the mic, you brought up sewer, so I'm going to jump to this question from the realtors so that each of the candidates have a chance to address it, which is how you would propose to fix the public's concern about sewer bills as they are now. And I realize you've touched on that, but the mic is yours for the next 4 minutes.
I pulled together a team of community experts. There have probably been, over the past couple of years, 22 people retired or resigned from the city finance department. I brought together several of those people, department heads and former employees. With that team, I brought in a former city manager who was quite familiar with the sewer project and the way in which the current fee tied to water usage was evolved. I added to that team several former city council members and a couple of municipal bond investors. And they've had several meetings with former city accounting finance department people, evolved a series of questions which were then presented to staff at WIFA, the Water Infrastructure Association or Authority for Arizona. And those staff people do respond. So I think we have a fair idea of how to mitigate sewer fees tied to water usage. Those issues have been explored in the past from the outset. They've been a part of city hearings, and seems to me like what it's coming down to, along the lines of what the editors of today's News Herald recommended in a major op-ed piece just several months ago. Multiple small sources of taxes and fees. A little bit on property tax. Some people want to do that because the property tax for a lot of people becomes an IRS deductible expense at the end of the year when you file taxes. Not a big hunk, but a small hunk. I think the newspaper editors advocated a small sales tax component to that. Granted, if you cut the sewer fee tied to water usage, you got to replace the revenue. There ain't no free lunches in this process. The bill's got to be paid. It's like a monthly mortgage. No free lunches. But changing the mix could significantly reduce the burden of that monthly bill. The most hated public policy in the history of this town. Sewer fees tied to water usage for a town in the middle of the desert has got to be plumb crazy. And there's got to be a sensible way to change that, to fix it, and to do it that's fair and equitable and not overburdensome in any one area of the replacement funds that are there. But I've got a team that has looked at that. Every time the mayor and the city manager make a statement about the sewer project, the sewer fees, that team is fact checking it. And I like what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing from my team of experts. They're good people.
Thank you. I'd like to go next. Same question. What would you do to fix the public's concern on sewer fees?
Well, some of the same things we've been trying to do. First of all, let me just remind you that this was a $463 million project that the citizens of Lake Havasu City agreed to put in, and we brought it in at $340 million. I'd also like to remind you that we've not had a rate increase since 2010. And while it sounds good with the idea of paying it off early, you have to get the money from somewhere. And we can say, well, budget a little less here, a little less there, but here's the difference. And kudos to MCC for paying down their debt. They paid down $5 million. We have $300 million of debt. And their general fund budget is higher than ours. We have paid over $50 million down in our debt. And we're about, in July 1, we'll be paying down another $9 million of debt. But we're trying to do that without raising rates, without a new property tax, without a new sales tax, because we've looked at those options. I hear, let's go to a flat rate, take it away from water usage. That would increase the rates for about 80% of our citizens. A flat rate would run $75 to $80 per month, sewer only. 52% of our residents pay $41 a month. So we can't go there. Property tax, we looked at a property tax, what would it do? Basically what it would do is for those, the most vulnerable in our community, those on fixed income and whatnot, would see a higher overall cost when you add the new rate and their property tax, and those who would benefit are those who are the high water users. Could you deduct it on your property tax? Maybe. My clients in those age brackets with fixed incomes generally use the standard deduction, so it won't make any difference at all for them. So what we try to do is we tried connecting it here in the desert. I get why some people don't like that, but we are in the desert. And you know what that has done? It has driven down water usage tremendously. Water conservation, and there's nothing more precious in the desert than water. So that's one of the good impacts of having that tie. But we will continue to look at alternatives. Like I said, Water Infrastructure Financing Authority has agreed to take a $58 million interest-only 5% bond and make it part of a $58 million 3% and principal. This was a bond that was accepted by our prior administration, and it's costing us dearly. And those are the types of things that I'm going to continue to work on to reduce. Let's get some lower interest rates. I do not want to raise your taxes, whether it be sales or property tax, because that's not making it better. It's just charging you differently. And I'm not going to secretly try to get it out of your 1%. And think what it would do to businesses. You add a 2% sales tax, you'd rather go someplace else to buy a car. $30,000 car is going to cost you an extra $600 if you buy local, as opposed to going to Bullhead or Kingman. So we've got to find other solutions than that.
The Nixon supporters would please hold off on the clapping after everything Mr. Nixon says. I'd appreciate it. You're not supposed to do that. Yeah. And everybody else. You don't have to clap for me either, which you probably don't want to do. But what Mr. Nixon, our current mayor, had to say makes some sense when you wade through all the usual stuff that he throws at you. I didn't vote for the sewer. I remember full well that it was the realtors who pushed that through with the builders, and I didn't appreciate it. And I didn't vote for the other one either, the second vote we had on it. But I, like many people, 52% of Havasuvians are in the low group. I conserve water. I've got like 50-some plants in my yard, and believe you me, when we have a winter like this last one, or practically any winter where you can't water, to try to, they're calculating your sewer bill, and boy, I take a lot of dead branches out of my plants in the spring. And it's not very nice, but what are you going to do instead? I prefer the $41 a month bill over a $75 a month bill if we go to the flat tax, or raising property tax. Who wants their property tax raised? Raise your hand. You want your property tax raised? 1 cent, maybe a 1.5 cent raise on the sales tax? I'm not so sure. To help the people at the top who have such trouble conserving water, maybe they got a lot of plants, maybe they got an acre yard, half acre, bigger than my yard. You can't just ignore people like that. Some of the beautiful yards they have in this town. You know, the beautiful houses and the beautiful yards. Tell us, take it all on them, they can afford it. No, that's not real fair either, is it? So maybe we should consider raising the property tax. I'm not saying I'm for that, I'm just saying I'd rather leave it the way it is, but if those people are really having trouble, maybe we should consider a penny increase, a penny and a half. Wow, I'm gonna go buy my new car down in Phoenix because of a penny and a half increase in the sales tax? I don't think so. I mean, that's ludicrous, sorry. You know, the cost of a new vehicle these days, it's out of my, you know, out of my range anyway, so I'm not too concerned about that. But a big ticket item, you know, you're gonna pay more in sales tax, okay. But it doesn't seem to me like that's a big problem. You raise the property tax, that's regressive, hurts the little people. You go to a half tax, a flat rate, same problem. Everybody's bill goes up to 75 instead of 41, who's on the low rate. So the sales tax increase is about the only option you can do. Make the tourists pay for some of it, or just leave it the way it is.